All right, so let's jump into the demo portion here. I'm going to do this in Claude today. You could do this in ChatGPT. Honestly, I preferred it in Claude. I preferred the outcome and the results that I got better in Claude. It did a better job of analyzing websites, uh, scoring them, and then making that actionable based off of that. So we're going to use that. And once again, we are using everybody's going to get either really tired or really big fan of your pickleball paddle company, Chris. We're going to use your company. It's a real business that Chris runs and co-founded, where they make really nice pickleball paddles at a reasonable price. So nice quality without paying an arm and a leg. So the first thing that we're going to do, and we did something a little bit similar to this the other day. We did kind of a competitive teardown, right? But today we're going to not necessarily do a competitive teardown, but we're going to analyze some of our competitors to understand how they're doing on those 3 rules on their websites, or really those first 2. And then identify how Dinki is doing and where their opportunity lies for improving, so that Chris can begin to outpace some of those competitors when it comes to AI search results. So the first thing is I'm going to take, and again, I'm using several prompts here that I'm not going to like read the whole thing. I'm not going to paste them into the chat here, but we will share them later. If you want to sign up for the newsletter at aweber.com/shift, we'll share a lot of these kinds of resources with you afterwards. But the idea here is really just teaching it those 3 things that we're focused on. So I've just pasted them in here. It's answer the customer's questions near the top, write for how people actually ask questions today, and then show up in more places than just your own website. A little less relevant to this analysis because we're really focused on our website for this portion of it. So it understands those 3 rules. It understands what's important when analyzing copy. So now I'm going to give it this prompt here below. And this is going to say, I'm going to give you 4 competitor websites for a small pickleball paddle and apparel brand. Now, you may not have 4 competitors. If you have 2 that you're really like aimed at, kind of competing for clients or customers with, use those. It doesn't have to be 4. It could be more or less. I went with 4 because it feels like a healthy number to get like a decent result, right? We're not just going head to head with one other business. Read each homepage and score it on those 3 AI search rules. For each one, tell me what's their core positioning. Do they answer their customer's main question near the top? Do they write in natural language a real customer would use? And then rate each one. Strong, needs work, or missing. Give me a quick summary table. So we're going to run that, okay? It's going to go in and it's actually going to scan those websites. It's going to look at the content, and then it's going to score it against that measure that I gave it. I'm going to let this run in real time because honestly, it does not take very long. And I think there's kind of value in understanding how efficient and quick this process can be. Chris, did you end up incorporating any of the copy that we generated?
I did not.
On the other
I should have, but I did not.
For your positioning? Well, good, because you might want to update it again after today. I have to stop using Dinki so you stop having to like continuously iterate and update your site.
I saw somebody asked in the chat if we could share the prompt. I'm just going to put it into a Google Doc, and I'll drop a link to the Google Doc.
Love it. Much better.
Jesse, I'm gonna copy. Yeah, those 3 rules, and then each of the prompt sections into it.
Perfect. I appreciate that. So it's analyzed 3 now. And it's now analyzing the final site, the 4th competitor, and here we have our output. So I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing to you, but it gives me what their core positioning is. It tells me, did they answer customer questions near the top? Did they write in natural language? So for the first one, it says, no, this is the weakest of the 4 on customer voice. It's dense with trademarks and SKU style product names that nobody types into a search bar. An AI engine has almost nothing quotable in human language to work with. Well, that's good news for Chris. So it analyzes each of those, and then it's actually going to generate a little summary table here for me. And you can read through this. It's like when you do this for your business and your own competitors, it's useful in understanding where you sit versus some of your competitors. But really, we're going to use this to kind of inform the next step that we're doing here. So now that I have an analysis or an audit of my 4 competitors, I want it to do essentially the same thing for my business or Chris's business. So now read this website, dinky.com. Apply the same 3-rule analysis. Where are the gaps? What would make this homepage invisible in AI search right now? And again, we'll let that run. So somebody asked, does it change if you use Claude or Chat or another AI? Does it make sense to do this for each AI? Yeah, I mean, you could run this through ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and any number of LLMs that you'd like to. And honestly, you could just weigh the outcome and the results. I tried ChatGPT and Claude when I was testing this, and I liked how lightweight the process was and the output that Claude produced. So that was my preference, but that's not to say that it has to be done within this. They can absolutely, you can run the same prompts and process in other platforms as well.
And
all right, so now at Reddit.
And that's kind of a fun thing too, when you're thinking about, I just shared a link to the prompts in the YouTube chat. So take a look at them. Feel free to use them. But that's kind of a neat thing that Jesse just mentioned there too, is like, if you have access to multiple LLM or generative chat products, try it in different places and see which one you prefer. Because although they're very similar and will give you, probably if you're using like GPT 5.5 in ChatGPT and Opus 4.8 in Claude, those are like the latest models, you're going to get pretty similar results. But who knows, you may find that you really do prefer one over the other, or it does actually give you meaningfully better results for the specific task that you're doing. Like, I find myself switching between the tools based on the task I'm doing. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of evaluating like, how cumbersome was this? Like, how much work did I have to do versus how much work did it do to get me there? But also, like, we talked about this the other day when we were doing some website analysis using Claude. Like, this still has to sound like you. You still have to like. So, like, we're gonna look at what it outputs in a couple of minutes in terms of like new website copy. If I'm Chris and that's my business, I'm still gonna sit there and edit and refine and kind of quality check what it gave me. So it may just be that if ChatGPT versus Claude, ChatGPT just gives you something that's a little bit closer to like your voice and what you're comfortable actually using, and you have to do less editing, then maybe that's the reason to use it. For me, like I said, I liked Claude, but that's not a hard rule by any stretch. They're both perfectly capable. Would you use the same prompt? Robin asked, would you use the same prompts for a website that is service-based versus product-based? You might tweak them a little bit if there's specific kind of like product versus service mentions, but I tried to make sure that they were fairly universally applicable. But like with all things, I would spot check them and make sure that it's not going to send Claude off in the wrong direction. The good news is it's really about analyzing the sites and gleaning that information from them. So if you give it 4 service-based competitors and your service-based site, they should do fine.
And if you're really curious about this, you could take our prompts and ask Claude itself or ChatGPT itself, say like, hey, here's a prompt that I'm going to use to perform whatever goal. In this case, it's like audit or analyze my competitors. My business is whatever your business is, and I sell a product or I sell a service. How would you improve this prompt? Or do you think this prompt is acceptable to get me a competitive analysis that's useful to me? Like, that's where these tools are helpful, is like to take something that you're already trying to do and get feedback on it. They're great on helping you iterate through things.
We had another question. What do you think about buying a domain name that ends in reviews and include all testimonials there? I came across this insight. Is it proven to help with the GEO? You know what? I don't know. Do you have a?
I don't know, but that sounds pretty fishy.
It sounds too easy.
Yeah, and it also sounds like something that that doesn't necessarily make sense when it comes to the way that that like both search signals and the models work. So I'm going to talk about Google specifically, um, because I imagine that eventually all of these tools are going to follow a similar model. But they've been
Hmm.
speaking recently. They published an article in their Google Developers Forums last month or something like that, where they were talking about optimizing your site for agentic search. And they
Hmm.
talked about the things that you should do, and those things were the things that you should do for SEO, like the stuff that Jesse shared there, like organize things so a human can easily find answers, questions and answers are easily identifiable. Getting signals on third-party sites, like, that's still really important, is people referencing you out in the world, that stuff is important, and they didn't come out and
Hmm.
say this, but a section of the article mentioned that things like you might have heard of LLMs.txt files that you're supposed to
Hmm.
upload to your site, and these models are supposed to treat them differently because they're machine readable, or they're easier for these
Yeah,
agents
it's
to use.
supposed to be a machine readable guide
Yeah,
for them to source
and maybe
answers.
that's true, but in Google's article, they seem to be saying that they don't treat that as they're crawling your page any
Hmm.
different than the rest of your site. So, that
Yeah.
makes me kinda skeptical that we're gonna be able to trick agentic search tools with
Well,
some of these. Even if that works now, I would be surprised if that worked long term.
yeah. I was gonna say, like, kind of two-part answer to that, and kind of piggybacking off of what you're saying there. Um, like one, just like with SEO, um, as they're training their algorithms, like they want to ensure the best quality results. And part of that is ensuring that they're not being like gamed, you know? So I think, the sniff test with the dot reviews thing tells me like, even if that worked for a week, it's not going to work for long because they're going to realize that people are just stuffing, like, they're hacking the system and stuffing results into dot
Yeah,
reviews and they're going to move away from them. So I wouldn't expect that. Even if it did work, I wouldn't expect it to be sustainable. The thing with like the LLM.txt file, it's like right now they're not, and there's so much about this right now. Like I think what we're trying to cover here a little bit is like the process of ensuring that your copy is written the right way, that you're not stuffing keywords, but you're speaking natural questions, unlike SEO of yesteryear, that you're actually surfacing the most important and most valuable information on your site, and then
yeah,
being in third party things that, like, to me, that's going to remain true. Like that's not going to shift and change. What's changing rapidly and is really hard to keep up with is they're they're exploring and figuring out what third party sources are going to produce the best results. So like I know we talk a lot about, like, people talk a lot about like Reddit communities because they're showing up in just tons of LLM search results. um, I'm not saying that's going to change, but that it could. This is still so new that it's a lot more volatile in terms of where to focus that energy. So for this, it's let's take those first two things and control what we can control with your
mhm.
website and ensuring that that's in the best possible position, because that third one, the external things, are going to take the most energy, um, and need the most time. Um,
Erica has a great question that I think we should treat that as as like the mailbag question, because that's like a big question about the future of the internet that
let's do that.
I
Let's come
I
back to
know
that
we
in a
both have
couple of minutes.
opinions on. Yeah.
Absolutely. So to wrap this up, Chris, it analyzed Chris's site, gave us his core positioning. Answer near the top: needs work. Oh no, Chris. The raw material and AI engine once actually exists on the page. There's a genuine FAQ written in real customer questions. Um, the problem is position. It's at the very
Mm,
bottom after the hero. Now, I'm a bit dubious, and I know I'm the one, like, giving this advice. That one of those things is like, I think as this develops too, like, position on page is going to become less and less relevant as it's capable of consuming much more content quickly and
yeah.
synthesizing that. So I don't know. If I were you, I might look at that one and go, I think it's
The
okay.
thing that
Natural language. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
like,
Go ahead.
seeing that, it makes me kind of wonder if, like, instead of moving my FAQs higher, should I update
Hmm,
my site content to be more problem solution focused? Which I think was actually
that.
one of the recommendations I got last time that you did this very helpful audit of my homepage.
I'm just going to keep auditing your page
Yeah.
until you
One
apply
day
it.
I'll do it. One day.
Dragging everybody along with us. No, and we're going to get to that because I think that kind of is the intent. And again, I think of like keyword stuffing. This is not just like stuff an FAQ type thing like high on your page, but is your copy naturally answering those kinds of questions, whether directly or indirectly? But is that answer there and written for people? I think the natural language thing, and yours is strong and is the best part. Actually, it said yours is the best of the group out of all 5. Way to go. The FAQ talks the way players actually talk. It's probably coming out of the fact that, like, one, you're a good, communicator, but you're genuinely passionate about pickleball. So I think that comes through, you know? But what's so good about, like, one of the best changes about this, and SEO was shifting this way for a while, but you can write for people. I mean, I don't know about you, Chris. I remember when I was creative director at the agency side and reviewing website copy for clients, and like that constant battle of like writing for search and writing for humans, and they were always in conflict with one another, you know? And even before AI search, Google started shifting to more natural language, but now you can really accomplish both. You can write for humans and surface, and you need to if you want to surface in AI search results. Offsite presence missing. That really shouldn't have been part of this analysis. We're analyzing your website. We're not asking it to look at like offsite presence right now. Gives an analysis. So again, that's super insightful, I think, as the business owner. I hope if you were to dig through this, Chris, you'd find some things that make you kind of rethink how you're doing it, or maybe find opportunities for improvement. But more importantly, we're going to use that for the final step.
This is there's like a backhanded compliment right there. Dinki is closer than it looks. What do you mean? Like, it looks really
like it's not. Is it saying it's not there yet? Or
it's
like,
oh, you might think this is trash.
At first glance, you might think this is a joke. It's filthy. I mean, again, charmingly ambitious. That's what Claude described me as, and I'm still mildly offended by that, I think. Flattered and offended. I'm not really sure which is winning. All right, so final prompt we're going to give it is rewrite Dinki's homepage headline, subheadline, and opening paragraph. The goals are to answer the customer's real question, use specific language that matches how pickleball player actually searches, differentiate clearly from those 4 competitors based on what you learned, and make it extractable. If an AI reads only this paragraph, it should know exactly who Dinki is, what they sell, and who they're for. And we'll run that. And so again, like each of these first few steps are really... they're helpful to inform, but they're really research steps to feed like kind of this final prompt where we're going to get some suggestions for updating some of the top level content, or copy rather, on Chris's site. And then we'll all hold our breath and see what Chris does with it.
I promise I will try. Send this to me and I will try and do it this week.
Well, no, but that's I want to call back to the most important thing. It still has, like, you need to look at it and put the human touch on it. Like, and not to get to where like Erica's talking about before we get to the mailbag and use that question, but like it still needs human taste, human involvement, your personal voice. There are still things like that is not going to perfectly nail. So I still want to make that clear too. Like, I wouldn't, if I were you, and I wouldn't expect you to, I wouldn't take this and just copy and paste it in. I would want some of your kind of influence on it. So it gave us 3 angles for the headlines: value led, serious carbon paddles under $80. Design led, it's the carbon paddle that doesn't look like everyone else's. Performance honesty led, the same T700 carbon, the expensive brand used for $69. And then it's giving you a subheadline that speaks more directly, and most importantly, an opening paragraph that really is aimed at answering or being synthesized for AI search to answer those questions that real users may have and be asking in natural language. So, I mean, the biggest takeaway for me here is, like, maybe you're not changing your headline or your subhead if you feel like they're where they need to be. But maybe you're adding some content like a little bit higher on the page that kind of, in a more descriptive, natural way, is answering some of the same things that your FAQ is, but in kind of like a paragraph format, or several broken down paragraphs. So you're not getting a big block of text,
That makes perfect sense. It's like, just like the last time we did this, that makes perfect sense. That like if I can address the defeaters people might be thinking about as they go, it's probably a lot more successful than hoping they open an FAQ question at the
Right,
bottom of the page. Yeah.
right, right. So that is the demo. I mean, the final thing I'll say, and I've said, is like you still need to revise this to make it, you need to give it a human check.
Yeah.
And frankly, like a brand check, and make sure that it really is in your voice. I think it did a pretty good job of matching a lot of that, but the intent here is not to just kind of copy, paste, publish, and update your site
Yeah.
without that verification. All right. So that was the first two parts. Now the third, and I won't get too deep into it, but is that offsite stuff, right? And this is a little harder to control. But if you're going to spend your time and energy there, I mean, if you gather reviews, ensure if you have a feedback loop from past clients, customers, whatever, use that. Send them to Google reviews and say, hey, I'm so glad that you loved the Sunrise carbon fiber paddle. If you've got a minute, we'd love it if you left us a review on Google. That stuff's going to build up over time, and that's going to matter. If you have the time, get involved in Reddit communities. Go to Reddit subreddit about pickleball and talk about stuff naturally.
Yeah.
There. Don't go spam, don't go post, but engage in those places and bring conversation around that. Honestly, there's a world of stuff. One of the biggest things that, I think is overlooked is earned media. So, whether that's getting your story out to people writing about your niche space or a broader subject like, small business owners and stuff like that. But finding ways of getting credible third-party mentions on credible platforms, communities, review sites, and otherwise. That's a slower build, and unfortunately one that you don't have total control over. But if you can very efficiently and quickly control the two parts that you can focus that time and energy on the third part.